Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Multifamily Monday. My name is Jesse Greer and I'm the Vice President of Multifamily Investments here at Avison Young in Northern Nevada. And today I have a returning guest joining me, which I'm very excited to chat about. And Brian, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Jesse.
Absolutely. So Brian is the project manager for the Center for Regional Studies, which is in the College of Business.
Correct.
Right? At the University of Nevada Reno. And last time we had Brian in here, we had a chance to talk about the development pipeline. And I think it's even more so important to have you back to talk about that same issue and really how COVID-19 has affected the development pipeline, not only for multifamily, but for residential as well. But before we dive into that, Brian, one more time, we'd love to hear a little more about you and your background here.
Sure. I've been project manager Center for Regional Studies for over 25 years, doing economic development analyses across the state and some across the U.S. sometimes. Do economic impacts, a lot of feasibility studies, track real estate, of course, demographics, employment, industry, you name it.
Fascinating. So really, you work hand in hand with a multitude of different agencies, not only public, but private as well.
That's correct. Our clients run the full spectrum: government, nonprofit, entrepreneurs, real estate, landowners, you name it.
Absolutely.
Whoever needs numbers.
And not only that, but what we'll dive into here in a second, you put out a fantastic report. So tell us a little bit about the report that you put out.
Sure. The Reno Sparks Residential Activity Report. We put out a report, tracks all your residential developments of all types. Through the pipeline process, from pending to having tentative maps to into the final map stage, watching the sales and prices, absorption rates really important.
Yeah.
So that's very good for across the economic development spectrum of knowing where growth is going to occur for more infrastructure, more schools, more utilities, and then commercial projects too.
So what's unique about this report, and to Brian's point, is you not only look at the information from the city of Reno or Sparks, but you look at it from a regional aspect, which I think for this economy to grow and to survive and be a competitor moving forward, we do have to look regionally.
Absolutely. It's a great point, Jesse. I mean, most of our jobs, or at least in 2019, were out in Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, Tri-Center. So that's kind of the new bullseye of employment. And so you've got, the Daytons and Fernleys, and then the Reno Sparks area surrounding that bullseye. And so, regionally, with the jobs growing out there, you're going to see housing grow out there also.
Absolutely, which is needed for this market. And speaking of housing, not only single-family residential, but multifamily, let's kind of jump into really what's transpired in this market since COVID hit, and how has that affected existing construction or prospective new construction for multifamily?
For multifamily, we didn't really see or have any direct knowledge of brakes being put on the construction already in play.
Okay.
And that would make sense in that they've already got the material costs and labor costs paid out, and so the those projects we saw continue to develop and build out on the multifamily front. On the single family front, we did hear from builders they immediately put the brakes on new permitting in April and May just to kind of see where everything was going to go. But what we're seeing in the new single family sales side is the demand is as highest as 2007, even through the COVID months. And so the builders caught wind of that, and so they're coming with the permitting again.
Now, that's absolutely fascinating. I mean, I think that's a very contrarian view to what a lot of people have of what's going on right now.
That's
right. What's amazing is just the amount of sales that we're seeing on not only new, but existing. And I think an interesting point that you brought up when we chatted last time is the difference between existing and new is that new is actually outpacing existing because of the lack of inventory and pricing, right?
Correct. That's a big deal right now is existing inventory, and that was further impacted by COVID, where sellers were no longer going to list and show the homes and play the COVID game.
Sure.
And so you saw the inventories decrease 30%. Wow. While the sales of the existing increased 20% in July. It's about 740 homes have existed sold in July. We haven't seen those numbers but once since 2005 for a monthly 700 total. And so the demand in 2020 for both sides, existing and new, has been through the roof.
You know, it's amazing how single-family homes in the northern Nevada region have really just looked at COVID as a bump in the road. In fact, I think one of the reports that you have here, which one is it? The median home value is now at $405,000, and that includes both new and existing, correct?
Correct.
And that's a new
No, that's just existing.
That's existing.
That's just existing.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. News run about 475,000.
Fascinating. And what's interesting about that, and we can provide some of this data on here so you can see as well, but when you look at this quarter, even though we're still at highs with pricing, we're actually still low off of our high just 2 quarters ago.
Yes, and just for the existing in July, we're up to 433, I believe. That month median price was at 433, which is
amazing.
A super big jump.
Amazing.
So here we go. 3Q you're going to see a spike in 3Q coming up, and that is because again that low inventory, overheated demand on top. You're still not seeing a glut of new single family coming into the market. It's as steady as she goes as we've seen in the last few years. And so it's a tight market all the way around, and so prices are going to feel that pinch.
Amazing. So from the single family home perspective, we're just continuing to do business as usual. Let's step back and really focus on the multifamily aspect of it, because that's really going to be the crux of the conversation. What I found amazing in one of your reports here, which is the multifamily units permitted monthly, is that since October of 19, we have only had 236 units go online. I'm going to repeat that. October of 19.
Yes, more than, 8 months about?
At least. Yeah. And those consist of just 2 projects, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. And so since, November, we've only added a total of 4 multifamily permit.
And we're not talking 4 properties, we're talking 4 units. So, yeah. I mean, and I guess technically that would qualify as a multifamily. I mean, I look at it as 5 units and above, but, we'll throw 4 in there as well, right?
Yeah.
So, why do you suppose that's the case?
It's the amount of inventory actively under construction right now. I mean, they came in last couple of years with lots and lots of permits for multifamily. We're tracking over 5,800 units currently under construction.
That's amazing.
So the builders know there's a lot of inventory rolling through the market right now, coming to the market in the next year or 2, as they've seen the last couple of years. And so if there's the pullback on permitting is a result of seeing so much inventory hitting the market and tax rolls.
And I want to reiterate this number too, because I think this is a number that this market really hasn't seen, I want to say, in a very long time or at all, right? When you talk about active developments currently under construction, we have 5,867 units that are pipelined to come to the market within the next 12 to 24 months.
Correct. That's about right.
That is a significant increase of not only inventory, but Class A product as well.
Right.
And what's unique about this, you mentioned that a lot of this inventory is actually student housing as well, which basically is very high density, high development as stories go next to UNR. So, it's amazing to see how much new pipeline is really coming to this market. And not only that, but here in one of the reports that you have, you mentioned that there's almost 3,000 new units that came online in 2019 alone.
2020.
Or in 2020?
Yes.
Okay.
So in 2020, we've added 3,151 multifamily units to the tax rolls in Washoe County.
Amazing.
That will probably be close to they generally they add the tax rolls in the summer. That'll probably be the market by the end of the year. It's 3,150 multifamily and only about 2,000 single family added to the tax rolls.
Wow.
So this will be the second year in a row where more multifamily was added than single family. We've never done that in history. It's always been more single family. And that is a result of the demographics you're seeing coming in the area. Millennials, looking for those Tesla jobs, getting out of congested Bay Areas, and the COVID escape, and spread their wings and good quality life in our area. And And so we're seeing a young crowd come in that really necessarily aren't going to buy a home.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. You talk about the population increase, you talk about, the job increases, and really all the fundamentals that are needed to sustain what we're seeing in not only pricing, but growth, right? And one example that you have in conjunction with the Johnson Perkins Griffin report is that we're still seeing average rents peaking out again. I mean, I think this is a new record at $1,369 for the average rents. Now, granted, you have to take this information with a grain of salt because there's only X amount of individuals that are in this survey poll, plus a lot of them can be more classified as maybe Class A or larger units. So it might not be representative of the whole of Northern Nevada, but it's a darn good representation for what we have.
I think it's a great representation. It doesn't really represent Class B and C, of course, but if you look at the Zillow rents from their data, the Zillow data, they're even higher in the rents from the Zillow data. What's interesting from the 2Q Johnson Perkins Apartment Survey report is that vacancy rate for 2Q is one of the highest we've seen in the last 5, 6, 7 years.
Sure.
For 2Q. Usually it drops down to a 2, below 3%. In a 2Q because it heats up in the summer. So having it being over that 3% is a sign of a softening market, believe it or not.
Got it.
And the other thing we really haven't talked about in these inventory multifamily, being active construction or coming into the pipeline, is that 1,000 units in 180 days project by the city of Reno, which at this point is 4,600 approved units through that program. The majority of those has not even hit our tallies.
Oh, really?
No.
See, I was under the impression a lot of what was put into that program was existing pipeline property.
There's some.
Okay.
There's a few. Blake Smith's out on West 4th. There's a couple other with Park Lane. But there's many little guys throughout the downtown area that have not yet been put into our numbers or they have not pulled permits yet.
Understood.
And so that's another 4,600 multifamily units coming in, and they have about another 1,000 to still be addressed by the city approving those deferred fees.
So I feel like we're at a fork in the road, right? And I feel like there's this level of uncertainty because you have two different things happening, right? You have a significant amount of multifamily product that is either under construction or pipelined or hitting the market. We've had a record-breaking year last year of new inventory that hit the market, right? But you have permits pulling back. In other words, these developers are saying, hey, are we hitting a breaking point? But on the other end of the spectrum, we're seeing average rents going up. We're seeing vacancies increase, right, slightly. Concessions are probably about neutral, from what we saw last time. So where are we at in this market? I mean, if you're looking to either buy multifamily or develop, would you be nervous right now, even though some of the fundamentals are still strong on population, job growth, vacancies, and rents versus how much we have in the pipeline? I think that's really what we're trying to find out, right?
Yeah, I tell a lot of government officials that I think the builders are some of the smartest people in town. I think they're very smart and savvy and know how to read these tea leaves better than I do.
Sure.
And some very smart bankers behind them that are financing the projects, and they watch these numbers very closely. And they're no dummies, so they'll figure it out as we go. They'll watch the stuff come in and become absorbed. Look at the vacancy rates and rents and continue to pen out the projects. I'm really not as concerned as the permits as a lot of entities are moving forward because permits can be pulled pretty quickly. I know it's costly, but at the same time you can line up your materials and labor without permitting. So you can pull some permits and if you've got your labor and financing already and materials, then you can go construction pretty quickly.
And I think that's another issue that we won't dive into too deeply, but is a concern right now with developers is their construction costs. I mean, lumber alone in the last couple months has increased tremendously, right?
Yeah, it supposedly went down.
Did it?
In end of 2019, it supposedly shrank considerably, but I think the COVID you're seeing across the nation a big increase in new home construction.
Yeah.
So of course that demand is going to put the upward pressure on material pricing. So it's probably snapped back to those old, costly lumber prices.
Got it.
So yeah, that's always a concern. And then labor, of course, is always a concern. Is there enough labor there in the market
to support that? Exactly. Wow.
So maybe, hopefully on the bright, there's a lot of job losses within the leisure and hospitality, bars and restaurants, those jobs, hopefully they could pivot to maybe into some construction jobs where there is need. It is dangerous to get too heavy into construction employment because when that does fall off, as you saw in 2007, 8, and 9, what that does.
There's a devastating effect, yes, absolutely.
And so that's kind of things we're watching moving forward is hoping things will balance out with the labor issues, what's going on with the COVID impacts. If that stuff comes back, how is that going to hit multifamily in rents, and are they going to make their rents, and when is that next leg of the stool going to get kicked out?
Yeah, and I really agree with you there because I really feel like right now we're in a masking effect with the economy and with multifamily and those being able to pay rents. And what's interesting is the National Multi-Housing Council, right, which is the advocacy group for multifamily, has been tracking collections on rents ever since this started. In this last month, we have seen a fall off to 90% of occupants paying their rents. But what I think is unique about that study and would be unique about that study paralleling in this market is I don't feel like a lot of the vulnerable section of the community and the vulnerable renters are really counted in these types of surveys, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where you're going to see more of the issues of evictions and working out, non-payments moving forward, as opposed to the Class A multifamily where it might be a different type of, individual that could afford that rent and pay the rent in a timely manner, even though they might have job concerns as well.
Yes, it all goes back to what industry you're employed in.
Correct.
And we know that leisure hospitality has some of the lowest wages, and so those are your multifamily households. And so we see that as a storm brewing as we move forward. Hats off to EDON and our region's economic development people and getting our area diversified in 2009. We're only about 16% leisure hospitality. We were 1/3, just like Las Vegas is right now, 32% leisure hospitality. So they're getting hit a lot harder in that industry down there. Our May taxable sales report from state, Washoe County was up 3%. That's the most recent sales tax data. Washoe up 3%, Vegas down 15-20%.
Oh man, that's just such a huge difference.
Yeah.
Just such an amazing dichotomy of the two markets, right? And I think unfortunately we get lumped in with Las Vegas from those that are unfamiliar with Nevada, and we really are our own unique environment up here. The last thing I want to bring up before we stop here is we talked about how much new product is coming to market. And I want to dive into one of the subregions that you have here. And the subregion is the North Urban subregion. And I think this is a unique region because not only does it consist of downtown prospective developments, but it consists of student housing as well, which we're seeing a whole lot more coming to market. So when you look at the developments that are coming down the pipeline for UNR and for downtown, does it make you a little nervous at all that we might be overbuilding student housing?
Yes, I would think so. The enrollments have been pretty flat at UNR, and so that's a concern. Is a great increase in student housing, except the enrollment is flat. So yeah, that's going to be a concern. I think that we will see growth in enrollment as we move forward. In the long term, it will be healthy and it will balance out. In the short term, there may be some pain to bear by developers and builders that came in all at once with half dozen projects all at once.
And there's quite a few of them too. Absolutely.
I guess they just mowed down 9th Street Evans property for new student housing this weekend. So that's another project coming to play. And there's been some other land taken down by UNR for future development. I don't know if the builders are going to try to do a flex model if they can't do a student, maybe they can just open up to market rate.
Yeah.
That's always an option for these people, for the builders with just freshly scraped land right now. But you're seeing a lot of that development within this sub-market is that 1,000 homes in 180 days set up by the city of Reno.
Oh, is within the submarket.
Yes,
Fascinating.
really picked
Okay.
it off, and that's a lot of projects that have come in in this downtown area through that center program where they deferred the building fees for 6 years, something
Yeah.
like that.
So do you think then, here's another issue that we're contending with in both representing clients and prospective buyers is when you look at where we're at now with the price per foot, that's some of the downtown product that maybe isn't student housing, right? Your traditional multifamily with apartments over retail or apartments under some sort of use. How are those even penciling now?
That's a good question. The ones I've seen are pretty much all almost market rate.
Okay.
Which that means $1,500 a month, right?
Exactly.
For one bedroom or maybe studio. And so for downtown, you need an evolution of your demographics into more office worker type of white collar, high techies move into the downtown, and we really haven't seen that move recently. You saw the Kings Inn go to the 3rd Street Lofts, and that kind of was pretty much almost the first.
It was the catalyst, right? 3rd Street Flats, yeah.
And then they hopped over, did that by Panic going to downtown behind them, and that conversion. And those were kind of the two we saw, and then really nothing in between. But that's sort of the concern is, the downtown needs a lot of help with beautification and bringing the amenities and retail in there that's not casino based. And so until you get it more of a buzz factor down in downtown, that Class A high rent may struggle.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've had a lot of buzz about different areas and what they could possibly do to the area. So hopefully that continues.
If we can get that Harris flipped over Reno City Center, is that what it's going to be called? And the Kimpton Hotel, that T3 project, Blake stuff on 5th with Cracker Barrel and then in and out. I mean, if we can get these vacant properties developed with some new buildings and some new buzz, I think that really could start setting off the residential component.
Well, hopefully it does, because it definitely needs it.
Right.
Yeah. So, fantastic. Well, Brian, is there any other tidbits of information you'd like to bestow upon us before we sign off here?
I think we've covered a lot. Jesse, they could always contact me.
Fantastic. So that being said, Brian, how do they contact you?
The best is phone number 775-784-1771.
Excellent. And these reports come out quarterly.
Correct.
So if you are a multifamily investor, developer, or even residential for that matter, or are looking for something completely different, like Brian said earlier, he runs the whole gamut.
Yeah, we do a lot of custom analysis. You have a project, just have some specific data needs, we can just drill down into that.
Fantastic. Well, Brian, thank you again for your time. I really appreciate your insight.
Thank you.
Have a good day.